Hi there everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to day 3 of my countdown to Final Fantasy TCG Worlds, and today we're going to be discussing an Earth-Water deck that actually bears a lot of similarity to an Earth-Water deck I posted not long before Opus 7 came out, but I wanted to show you guys some updates to the deck that I think would be really good, and I think that honestly this deck is actually going to do very well. Don't forget to check out all of my social links in the description box below, as well as my Discord channel and my Patreon page if you want early access to all of my videos. But without further ado, we'll just get straight on with the deck. Now, a character that I know a lot of people are excited to play since Opus 7 came out, and who has turned out actually to be a very good card, is Noctis. So I wanted to build a deck that catered to Noctis as best as physically possible, while still, being a deck that can retain advantage very quickly and take advantage of effects similar to his. So I've gone with a single copy of Dark Knight Cecil from Opus 1. Now, if you remember before Opus 7, I actually said that this card was a very strong pick against Turbo Discard. But with Turbo Discard going out of the meta, because we're banning Joesephyr and Thaumaturge, I don't think we need as many copies of him as we had before, because 5,000 damage isn't enough to deal with a lot of things. But having access to the combination of him and Fusoya is very powerful still. So I still wanted to have a copy, and worst comes to worst, we could always use him as an S fodder for the other Cecil that's in the deck. Dark Knight is an interesting pick, and the reason that I really like Dark Knight in a deck like this is because we're taking damage through things like Fusoya, or we're wanting to because of things like Noctis, you're going to have damage that's been taken. But I actually really like this card because of Gladiator, and it's before this reason I really wanted to run 3 Gladiator, but I just couldn't find room for it. One of the things you'll notice with Earth and Water together is that there are so many good backups that it's really hard to make choices between them all. But Dark Knight can be used as a combat trick if you have a Gladiator out and you're attacking. So say you're a 7k guy and you're blocked by an 8k guy and you've taken at least 2 points of damage. You can respond to the block by using Gladiator to pull back Dark Knight and then give buffs to the guy that's being blocked. And it's I think it's just a really nice little interaction, and at worst he's an on-curve forward. So I actually quite like just a one-off Dark Knight as an extra search target for Bran as well that can be used for Earth CP, so that colour fixing is slightly easier. Delita is a card that I've been liking for quite some time, certainly in combination with the Viking and Layla engine, and it's also quite a nice use for the Dark Knight once you've used him as well. So honestly, and he gets a little extra buff from Wol when you use it. He's just very good in this kind of deck. And then Noctis is the star of our show here, and Noctis honestly has a lot of synergies with a lot of things in this deck. If you have him and Dark Knight Cecil out, then you're just, if you take damage you're going to kill something, possibly 2 things. If you've got them out and Fusoya, then your opponent's board is going to struggle to stay on there for a while. I actually really like Noctis, and he's also quite synergistic with Yojimbo and Hecatonka as well, because if you're trying to take out something that's too big, then you can use him as a blocker, or if you need to use his ability so that he takes no damage. I think he's just that ability is expensive, but it is very useful in the right circumstances. So I actually think Noctis is very good, and that's why he's the MVP of this particular deck. And then Dadaluma and Wol and Cecil are all very kind of standard fare for any good Earth deck. I want to run 3 copies of Dadaluma and 3 copies of Wol, but similarly to the backups in this deck, there are so many good options here, I can't fit all of them in. There's 25 forwards in here already. Any more than that and we're going to have to start suffering when it comes to backups and summons. But definitely having Dadaluma, Wol and Cecil in here is just really good. If anything, I actually wanted to run 7-drop Tama in here to make use of the Cecils again, because I think that he's really good for multiple things, and I just really like the card. And then going into the water forwards, it's basically mostly just going to be things that are support based. But we have Ephemeral Summoner, who's obviously very synergistic with Fusoya, but not only that, but you can break it for Delita to break a 2-drop if you need to. Then we have Viking and Layla, which is the draw engine that everybody loves to hate, and it's just very powerful. You can't really go wrong with it. And again, Delita synergies. You've also now got Steiner as well. Steiner, I think, in here is very good because you're running things like Fusoya and you're wanting to take some damage. So I really like the fact that you can just draw cards off of the pain that you've taken. He's just good. And you can also use things like Ephemeral Summoner, Viking, Layla to buff him if you need to, and I think that's useful as well. Cloud of Darkness is in here, and honestly Cloud of Darkness would probably be the first card that I dropped if I wanted to change anything from here, despite the fact that I think the card is absolutely incredible. We can't build up advantage or field advantage in this deck as quickly as, say, a mono water deck can through things like Lena or Cagnazzo. But I think the fact that we have Viking and Layla in here means that she's a perfectly viable option. You can easily, she's a wall breaker, she's very good at just kind of smashing through your opponent. If you've got one there, she needs to be dealt with. So I've definitely gone for 2 copies in here, but you don't have to run her in this deck. I think that I like her a lot, you may not. Again, like I said earlier, the backups in this deck are very, very difficult to kind of thin down because there are so many good backups in Earth and Water. It's really, really difficult to pick between them all. The problem with Earth is that all the high cost ones are really, really good, so you can't pick between them all. And the problem with the Water ones is all the 2-drop ones are really, really good, so you can't pick between them all. So I hope I've got a good kind of range here. I've gone for more of a toolboxy option and kind of 3 ofs of everything. With the Earth ones, I went with a Mog because just 1 Mog is useful just to be able to search up anything you need at any given time. 1 Scholar because I thought that having access to Yojimbo and Hecatonka, because they're removal pieces at the end of the day, is useful, and it means that we can run an Earth version of Aiko, who I would have run in here because we're running like 9+ summons, but I think that having a Scholar means that we can have Aiko in Spirit but under Earth CP instead. Tama I really like in this deck because we're running things like Cecil, like Noctis, like, you know, things like Dark Knight even, where your opponent attacks you and you surprise them with one of those and then you're going to get to remove something and then not know about it and then probably not like it. Minor and Minfilia and Shantotto are all pretty good for any Earth deck, particularly having 2 Minor and 1 Minfilia, because you can use, you use Minfilia to pull back 2 guys and then it gets broken, you can then Minor the Minfilia back and then use it again, and then you can Minfilia the Minor back. It's like you get a nice little chain of effects there. And also being able to deal with Yuris on a backup or any light and dark character is really useful. Fusoya as well, being able to destroy opposing Fusoyas is very useful as well. Shantotto, I only wanted 1 in here because honestly you don't really want to be removing things like Viking and Layla from the game. But obviously if you have to, you have to. If you're on a back foot then you're going to need to do something about it. But I don't think we need any more than 1 in here because there's so much removal in here already. But you might choose to run a second one in place of, say, Minfilia, and there's nothing wrong with that either. And then with the Water ones, Cleide I thought was a nice little tech because she can activate any Prince or Knight. Noctis is obviously a Prince, and then you've also got Delita and Steiner, which are both Knights. So there are actually a nice little range of things that she can activate. It's useful because it's essentially giving them Brave, and if, you know, the Ice Lightning 13 deck or any Ice deck and Lightning deck that goes off in the last couple of videos that I've shown you turns out to be really, really popular, then you're probably going to need it. So you might want to run extra copies of Cleide, you might not want to run her at all. I think she's a nice little tech. Gladiator is one of those cards I really wanted to run 3 of because we've got the Viking and the little Dark Knight tech that I think is quite nice. But I think 2 is probably the right number, given that we're also running 2 Yuna. Yuna, I just think that 2... I wasn't sure about. Yuna's the one I'm not sure about because we're only running 5 water summons. But honestly, 3 CP Kukulanes and 2 CP Famfrits, the value increase by them being 1 CP less is so huge that I think it's really nice to have Yuna. And then double Bran, because honestly having an EX Burst Searcher is useful in any deck, and being able to search up Viking, or the fact that we put the Dark Knight in there means that she can also search for Earth CP, because Dark Knight is best suited to being in your break zone anyway. I thought that having 2 of her was probably the most useful call. The summons in here I've gone for primarily forward removal, well, solely forward removal realistically. I haven't gone for any copies of Opus 1 Hecatonka because I wasn't sure where I could fit it in, and I wanted to have as much of the forward removal as possible given the nature of the deck. So I've had 2 Hecatonka and 2 Yojimbo. Yojimbo I actually quite like, A, because it's an EX burst, and B, because it is a combat trick in and of itself. You can obviously increase the power of your guy before you use it, and there's a lot of guys in here that are, you know, easily made bigger. Things like through Wall, like Noctis can protect himself if need be. Delita actually gets 2k bigger if you use it on him. It's just a nice little play, and it works very well with Fusoya because you can board wipe your opponent under the right circumstances. And in a pinch you can always use Noctis and then make it so that he doesn't take any damage from the Yojimbo, which is always nice. And then Famfrit is synonymous with Viking and Layla just because it's just very, very good. And if you're on a back foot, then it's great for pulling yourself back into the game because it's cheap removal. And then Kukulane, again, is a combat trick that draws a card, so there's nothing really bad to be said about Kukulane, certainly if it's 3 CP instead of 2. I really, really like Kukulane, just I have done him in Water decks since he came out in Opus 2, really. Now the idea of this deck is just to be quite tempo based and make sure you can kind of keep your advantage up as often as you can. The biggest problem I can see with this deck is going to actually, funnily enough, be opposing Dadalumas, because things like Fusoya, Cecil, Noctis, etc. don't play very well with him. So honestly that's why we have triple Famfrit in the deck, so that you can kill off the stuff around Dadaluma and then finish him off. Or you could use things like, just overpower him with things like Wall. Delita is also a really good out to it because you can break your Layla to break Dadaluma, but he is going to be an issue. But to be honest, Dadaluma is an issue for most decks, and that's why he's in this one. Anyways, that's going to be it from this video for today, but thank you very much for tuning in, and you've got another 2 decks to look forward to before Worlds this weekend, so do stay tuned for that on this channel. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as I said at the beginning of the video, don't forget to check out all of my social links below. And don't forget to tune into the Square Enix official Twitch stream at this weekend if you wanted to watch Worlds itself, and I'll hopefully see you guys there. Thanks again, I'll see you soon. Bye.